All right, so I am using my tablet now so that I can make better selections. And I am also using my mouse so I can do easily, like kind of right click and left click. So don't think of them as exclusive tools to use. I'm also using my keyboard and doing Command minus to zoom out, Command plus to zoom in, and Command 0 to fit everything on screen. But that's a background plate. Another background plate I was thinking of using was the sun, this one here. So I'm on the Move tool. I have Auto Select Layer on. So all I need to do is click on that, and it will automatically move that layer. I can move the sun into place. But it's got these big buildings in it. So maybe I don't want the sun to be that big. So I hit Command T, hold down Shift, and shrink it so that maybe some of that temple is still in there. But now I have an issue, right? I have an issue that I know I don't want the guy in the bicycle in there. And I want these mountains to line up with this. So I'm going to also have to tilt it. See if I can line up that horizon in a way that makes sense. And I'm going to have them overlap a little bit. I might also try flipping it. So if you right click within your transform box, you can also flip the negative. That might give me a few more options. So how do you place these things? You can take their opacity down and play with them that way. Line up the horizon. You can also swap the order, and you can do that just by clicking and dragging with the layers, dragging one in front of the other like that. You can also do it using Command left bracket to move a layer down and Command right bracket to move a layer up. Okay, so now the problem is this doesn't look very much like a puzzle, right? This looks way too hard-edged. So now I'm going to use my stylus. And by clicking on this, I'm going to use my stylus to take chunks away and to soften some of these hard edges. And then just select around it using your stylus and then hit delete. You can do that on this side as well, just to get more of that sun in there for the time being. But I don't think I want that tower, so I'm going to leave that in. So there'll be a lot of that now, but I'm just building the backdrop. So let's see what else is back there. Open sky, sun, don't really have much else. So maybe I need to go back to my reference now to fill in a hole and look for some interesting sky. So I have the tombstones, which are right here. Use the Move tool. Use Command T. I can tilt it. I can move it behind with Command left bracket. And I can see, yeah, now I've got sky across most of it at that tilted angle. That's a decent backdrop, but I don't need any of this. So let me cut around it and get rid of it just by hitting delete. And I'm able to do that because I've rasterized these layers now. Now, just like we did with the shape tools, what I could do is, if I'm having trouble seeing what's going on, is I can select my background layer, then use the rectangular Marquee tool, which is right here, select around the image, make a duplicate of just that image, so it's floating on its own layer, and then move that up above everything. But make it a very low opacity, like maybe 10%. That's a guideline I can turn on and off, but it helps me kind of see where I had things in mind, what works. The problem with that, as long as you have it turned on, you're not going to be able to use auto select effectively. I'm going to go ahead and flip this horizontally and rotate it again, so I get more of that sky, less of that tower in the corner, because I think that will interfere with the other things I'm trying to do. Good. All right, now some of the middle ground, the double arch, the elephant, the bedrock, all of that starts with this piece. Use command right bracket, get it on top. But instead of putting it in and then erasing around it, I can do this. I can use my lasso, and I can loosely select around it. I know I don't want that guy in there. I don't really want those trees. So I lassoed around what I wanted to keep. So instead of deleting it, I'm going to hit Command J to duplicate just what I wanted to keep. And then I can turn off the layer behind. Or I can just flat out delete the layer behind. Oops. You can also use your arrow keys to kind of nudge things into place. So I was thinking something about there. Now with this piece, I can do the same thing. Once it's selected, I can select around it what I want to keep, just roughly. I obviously don't want this piece of road in there. Then hit Command J to duplicate it on its own layer, go to the layer behind it, either turn it off or delete it entirely. Now this will be my first example of compositing, blending two layers together to make my own rock formation. Because I have a very particular thing I want. Because both of these arches are from Arches National Park, they're fairly recognizable. I am now going to blend them together. And this is how. First, you always work basic to more specific. First, I use a 100% opaque eraser at 100% hardness, large enough that I can manipulate with one of these pressure sensitive to scale tools. And I'm going to erase all of the sky around Elephant Rock here. This is a rough cutout. I could also do it with my lasso and delete. But it's super hard edged. We're not blending anything yet. We're just defining the shape. Styluses are very helpful for this, especially the pressure sensitive for scale. So if I want to only erase a little bit, I don't press very hard. If I want to erase a lot, I can press a lot harder and cover more area. What I love about compositing is you really are creating your own imagery. Even though they're other people's pixels, I am making my own arrangement of them. It's completely unique to my choices. And I'm just working on one layer at a time. So first, Elephant Rock. We're going to get into different types of selections, but for just completely obliterating the outline, getting rid of this stuff, I like to use just the eraser tool. at 100% opacity, which is up here, 100% flow with a hard edge. I can use Command plus to zoom in. I can press the space bar to move around if I need to get in closer and see exactly what I'm doing. I can use smaller and smaller brushes, but I want to work basic to complicated. So I'm not trying to be super nitpicky, right? Like get every little bump here. Because at this point, I'm still not quite sure how the big picture will all come together. But I'm pretty sure I want this in there. And to have a sky showing behind it. Okay, let me show you some other ways we can select around. When the background is sufficiently different than the foreground, as it is here, I can also use what are called selection tools. And my favorite is the Magic Wand tool. You'll find it under the Quick Selection tool. The Quick Selection tool can work well for this as well. I'm on the right layer, and I simply kind of roughly indicate what I want it to select. And as long as it can define an edge pretty well for itself, it will do a pretty good job. But it will leave a little trace behind. This is why I don't prefer the Quick Selection tool. So instead, I always use the Magic Wand tool underneath, because you are able to set its tolerance. And you can set whether it's contiguous or not. So basically, wherever I click, it will find pixels contiguous, touching the pixels I click, that are similar enough within a tolerance of 10, it will select them for me to delete, just using the delete key. Now 10 is a pretty narrow selection. So if I undo all of that, and I change the tolerance to its default, which is 32, basically a third, it will do a pretty darn good job getting rid of everything I don't want. Better than the Quick Selection tool. But only if it's easy for the computer to tell where the edges are between foreground and background. I can add to a selection. So once I have something selected with the little marquee around it, the marching ants, I can hold down Shift, and it will show me the selection tool with a little plus sign, and then I can add to it. If I don't hold down Shift, it will simply make a new selection. And I can delete from it, like so. So if I hold down Shift and I kind of get all this stuff, that actually might be helpful. I'll leave that. And then you can hit Command D to deselect. Okay, so let's see this in action. So Elephant Rock, I've cut out pretty well. Now I've got to worry about the one behind it. And I'll turn off Elephant Rock for now. So all that blue sky, that should be very easy for me to select and erase. And I'm going to use the Magic Wand for it. Select, delete, select, delete, select, delete. Works beautifully well. We'll get into refining those selections in later projects. Okay, now comes the time for the blending. Is there any part of this background rock that I don't want to show up? And yes, there is. I don't like all of this. So now I can kind of just roughly delete behind it, behind the elephant rock. Okay, and now how do we merge one object into another? I'm going to take the layer that's above, this elephant rock, and I'm going to use my eraser tool, but I'm going to change the opacity to being closer to 30% instead of 100. I'm going to take my hardness and I'm going to take it down to about 30%, make my size a little bit bigger. And I'm on the wrong layer. That can happen easily.